What's going on, guys? This is the Red Rogue and I hope you're all doing well today. This video isn't going to be a guide or a tutorial or any of the usual stuff that I do on the channel, but more so it's a story. And it's a story I wanted to share with you all because of the message behind it, if I can hopefully explain it well enough without rambling too much like an idiot. Basically, the setup for this whole video is I earned Keystone Master just last week for Season 1 of Shadowlands. And no, that doesn't mean this is just a big bragging fest where I'm like, oi, I'm a Pog champ, and smash the like button and uppercut the bell or whatever other arbitrary YouTube crap people always say. But rather, it's for words of encouragement for people that aren't part of the current meta in Mythic Plus, or aren't inviting people that aren't part of the meta of the current Mythic Plus to their keys, and people that are struggling to get Keystone Master and to push beyond Keystone Master, because the group I did virtually all of my highest keys with and the keys I did for Keystone Master was a group that if you saw that in the MDI right now, your head would probably explode. So let's start from the beginning, because I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So this video is kinda just going to be my personal experience on the route to Shadowlands Keystone Master Season 1. But really I'm telling the story for the message behind it. While there are a lot of players out there pushing 19s, 20s, and even higher than that, it is entirely possible to get your class or spec through Keystone Master, even if you aren't part of the current meta or ideal composition for Mythic Plus. To put this story in perspective, my usual tank and healer are a Prot Paladin and a Holy Priest. And for like 6 or 7 of those Keystone Master achievement keys when we first did them, we had a Destruction Warlock and an Enhancement Shaman too. And with that group, we've been doing 16s and starting to get into 17s as well. So yeah, not anything even remotely close to what would be considered meta. There were a lot of high and low points on our pathway to Keystone Master. Basically, since Mythic Plus became a thing back in Legion, I've had a guild group or a specific group of friends that I would do all of my keys with, so pugging was never really something I worried about. And that was looking to be the same way going into Shadowlands, but within the first month, a lot of folks just stopped playing. There are probably many reasons why, though a few folks that I still talk to were just tired of bad luck with loot or just not getting loot at all. Despite the lack of our friends playing anymore, myself and the Holy Priest that I do all of my keys with have always been all about pushing our Mythic Plus scores every season, as Mythic Plus is our main interest in endgame content, since we don't really bother with cutting-edge raid progression anymore. The Prot Paladin that I've known since Nighthold in Legion works night shifts, whereas the healer and I work during the day. This basically put us in a bind of only doing keys maybe once a week at most with what was left of our group, and even then there were times he couldn't play at all due to work constraints. These were only the first of many speed bumps that we've come across as we wanted to push our Mythic Plus progress as high and as quick as possible. Due to all our Mythic Plus friends leaving for one reason or another, we've had to pug a lot. And it seems like a 50-50 shot whether DPS that we bring into our keys were decent or not, and I can't even count the number of times that one person will just rage out and leave a key because a single pull didn't go the way that they wanted it to. I mean, literally no joke, I've had someone leave a Necrotic Wake on a single pull, and as my fellow sneaky boy rogues out there would know, a rogue in Necrotic Wake is virtually a guaranteed timed key if they're running Master Assassin and know how to use the weapons correctly, at least until Blizzard nerfs that. After the first month or so of getting decently geared and wanting to really push our Mythic Keystone progression, we decided that anytime we came across a player that we pugged into one of our keys that did pretty well, we'd reach out and see if they wanted to add us on Battle.net or to stick around for whatever the key turned into. Whether you'd believe it or not, despite the whole making YouTube videos thing and talking with folks in my community Discord or on Ravenholt and in the comments of these videos and all that, I'm a bit of an introvert. I'm not really the type to reach out and just start a conversation with someone I don't know or be really forward about much of anything, let alone asking people if they want to add me on Battle.net or do keys with me after the first one that they pugged into. However, if there's one really important thing I've learned from this first season of Shadowlands, is it never hurts to ask, because they very well might be in the exact same situation you're in and be more than happy to come along for some dungeons. WoW is still a game heavily affected by the social aspect of the players, even with all the group finders and queues that you can join. Forming a group of like-minded Mythic Plus players can be a very time-consuming process, as you can do so many keys where people just finish it and immediately leave the group without saying a word, or a number of other frustrating situations that can occur if you're alone or feel alone when pushing Mythic Plus. Even when we can manage to have myself, our healer, and the tank all online together at the same time, it was still a very arduous process to find 2 other decent DPS that we could rely on pretty consistently to join up with us, just due to how varied everyone's schedules can be, or if they had other folks that they played with instead of us. After all, these were folks that we barely just met that we were reaching out to and hoping that they would help solidify our group, regardless of what class they were. Ironically, I feel that of the few times we did end up having a pug that was a meta DPS, like a fire mage or a boomkin, it was still a coin toss whether or not they were even relatively good or not, even with decent Mythic Plus scores, and the folks who were non-meta classes with decent Mythic Plus scores played better if anything. The pugging and pushing and constant search for DPS and keys led us to an enhancement shaman we brought into one of our necrotic wakes that we were trying to push to change into a key that we actually needed still. He too had voiced the same grievances of people just bailing out on keys when one thing isn't done correctly, so we figured it wouldn't hurt to ask if he wanted to try and push for Keystone Master with us. He agreed to join up and explained his Mythic Plus group situation, which was actually very similar to our own. Once we had a pre-made group of 4 players, you'd think that the story ends super easy peasy, rainbow unicorn style because we have nearly the entire group, and we were all even in Discord and wanted to push Keystone Master together, right? I mean, we got quite a few knocked out back to back between the 4 of us, which was great. So we had quite a few 15s in time on our progress, respectable IO scores, and all of us were between like 216 and 221 item level. But yeah, no. We ended up waiting like an hour just to find a single Theater of Pain, a The Other Side, or Spires of Ascension. It didn't matter which one of the 3 because we needed all 3 of those still. This is where the whole not being a meta group thing bites you in the butt when you're not pushing your own key, sadly. Outlaw is still really well represented in Mythic Keystones, but we had a Holy Priest, a Prot Paladin, and an Enhancement Shaman, so 2 melee. And yeah, that's not exactly the shiniest example of what all the top groups are using to push like 23s and 24s and whatnot, despite the fact that we just wanted to get past the plus 15 hurdle. From all this waiting around and queuing for keys, we did end up having a Fury Warrior who was willing to bring this extremely unorthodox composition to his 15 Spires of Ascension. Unsurprisingly, we timed the key perfectly fine, albeit with a couple hiccups due to missing 1 trash pack which threw off a couple of the prideful spawns. But it was fine, it still got timed, that's all that mattered to us. It wasn't until we managed to wrangle up a 5th player though, a Destruction Warlock that our tank had introduced to us early out in Shadowlands, but we hadn't run that many keys with him just yet. Having a full group of 5 of us and now having probably one of the most unmeta compositions we could somehow put together, we decided to just keep doing our own keys, hoping with fingers crossed that we'd at least get some higher keys for score, or if we got lucky, the last couple that we needed for Keystone Master. This ended up being a very long process, from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, like 10 hours, but it did result in the culmination of this The Other Side footage that you've been watching. After the tank, healer, and I finished our Keystone Master, we ended up redoing a couple of the keys that the Shaman and the Warlock had both been missing, ending the week with all 5 of us getting Keystone Master, and us doing probably like easily over a dozen plus 14s and higher over the course of the week, probably closer to like 16 or 17 14 and higher keys, which is pretty crazy. By far, that's the most keys I've done in a single week, let alone being higher ones, and let alone over the course of basically a day and a half. And other than a few snafus, these were easily some of the most fun I'd had in Keystones in quite a long time. Despite the 3 of us getting our mount and achievement before them, we did want to make sure that both of our teammates did too, as it's really important to look out for one another. I think that is another aspect of the game that seems to get lost in the noise and interference that we all deal with in our day-to-day lives. It doesn't cost anything to be nice or considerate to others. And I know I'm not the only introvert out there, so it might be hard or difficult at times to reach out and communicate with people you don't know, but it really does help a lot if you're still pushing for Keystone Master and beyond. This group also became a testament to the fact that while a meta or ideal comp of classes will always exist, it doesn't mean you have to follow it to at least get Keystone Master, and honestly even further beyond that if you can find a group of solid players that are willing to get in Discord together and communicate. The more you work with the same team, the easier it gets, at least in my personal experience. I'm sure there's other parts I'm missing out on this story and I could elaborate on it further, but I figured this is already really long, and I hope my personal story and journey through and past Keystone Master gives you folks a bit of encouragement when joining and forming groups for your own level of progression. Just remember, it never hurts to see if the folks that you pug into your groups want to do more stuff later, or who knows, even on a more consistent basis than just trying to pug keys randomly. Again, my experience may be wildly different than your own, and not being part of the meta does make the process harder to accomplish, but I know it can be done, so don't feel discouraged. forming your own Keystone groups might be the best place to start if you aren't part of an active guild or community, but again, don't hesitate to talk with and try to be friendly with the folks that you do keys with. I guess if there was anything else I can mention, it's that I'm more proud of the folks that I play with because of the fact that we didn't have to conform to some really arbitrary list of character types that we have to bring to time 15s and 16s and whatever. And with the next fortified week, I bet we'll get even further together. This video ended up being a hair longer than I originally expected it to be, mainly because I wanted to cover as many of the speed bumps and trials and tribulations that myself and the folks that I play with have gone through to get to this point of Keystone Master for Season 1. And while I might not tell you to destroy the like button or uppercut the bell, any likes, comments, or new subscribers are all greatly appreciated, and they do help a lot with the channel's growth, so if you want to, then that's awesome. If not, that's fine too. Anyways, I hope you folks enjoyed this video. And as always, I just want to say thank you to my regular viewers, commenters, subscribers, and especially my patrons, who all help make these Shiba Shenanigans possible. Thank you all so much for watching. This is the Red Rogue, and I'll see you guys around.